Bill O'Brien gives some tantalizing details on his transfer portal strategy, and I think some of the things he said should get Boston College fans excited.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of the Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been running this show for over 5 years. If you're looking for Boston College news, details, and analysis on your Eagles, you are in the right place. Locked On Boston College is a detailed Boston College podcast available on YouTube for free and on wherever you get your podcasts. Now, on today's show, we're going to talk about basketball. They end their cupcake schedule with a win. But again, just like every other win, it doesn't feel like a win. 2 quarterbacks enter the portal this weekend with local roots. I'm going to tell you why neither of them are the answer. And Bill O'Brien speaks on the portal on his podcast. But before we get into that, I want to say that today's episode is brought to you by Rougiette. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rougiette.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette ready, feel present, feel confident, feel ready. All right, let's get into this. On Bill O'Brien's most recent podcast with John Mita-Perrell, he talked about the future of BC in terms of the transfer portal. He talked about a few other things too, which I'll get to at the end of this segment, but I want to talk about his comments on the portal because I thought they were really interesting. First of all, he said that he expects Boston College to be a major player in the portal this year and that he's going to be involved in some of the bigger names. I thought that was a really interesting thing to say because, hey, this is Boston College. They're never a player in much of anything, right? Like this is the world we've lived in as Boston College fans and people who cover this team for years. The fact that he feels that they're going to be involved with these names and you're going to see them involved with these major players is a good sign. Because, as I've said on the show, there are numerous positions they need to get big names in because they are so behind the 8 ball at some of these positions. Again, go with linebacker. They don't have a linebacker that has more than, a handful of snaps on their roster. Quarterback, they lost their starting quarterback and this backup graduated. They need to be involved. They cannot take guys that are not ready at those positions. They need guys that, fill up stat sheets, guys that other schools are going to want. And if BC can actually go out there, he talks about the rev share and how happy he was that they're at the max rev share, and that's going to help them a ton. Now is the time to go out there and prove it. He's mentioned this before, that the transfer portal is like speed dating. That he didn't say speed dating, but the term he used basically made it sound like speed dating. Basically, like you get a guy in and it's like boom, boom, boom. They got to get them in for an official. They make an official visit, and then it's commitment time, and then they got to sign them. And I think the dates too were also something important. So you have these major players that you want to get in. It starts on January 2nd. January 2nd is when the portal opens. It goes all the way to January 16th. Now, I don't know the exact date BC's first day of classes. If it's any time before January 16th, that ekes it up even more. BC could probably, convince them to allow them to skip a class or two or miss a class because they transferred in late, but they've got to go fast. And one thing that I thought was interesting that what Bill said was that the transfer portal class that he projects, and he wouldn't give in any positions that they're looking at. He kind of dodged that question, was a class of 10 to 15. BC brought in, I believe, 17 total between the spring and winter portal last year. So it's a little less than that. Now, the numbers I've heard in terms of scholarships would dictate that they have a little bit more space than that. Now, I have to say, I have no idea when they recorded this show. He could have recorded this 2 weeks ago and there's been surprises, but he also mentioned Stevie Amar entering the portal. I think he entered a week ago. So it can't be that far off. That number is interesting because I still think the number BC brought in last year is around where I expected. I said 15 to 20. 10 would be real low. They have way too many needs for 10. But they do, 15. Yeah, you could probably get by with that. I don't know what, the scholarship numbers I've heard probably have more room than that. But you also don't want to, I think, a lot of the stuff you have to play a little bit of the political side. Like, you can't go out there if you're BC, and he said this also, that they're a developmental program that they want to bring in high school kids, and go say, we're bringing in a huge class of 20 transfers because the players are going to go, hey, what about us? So you have to be a little bit conservative on that. And if there's needs and players that you can get and fit, then you do it, right? Like, you don't go out and say that you're going to do it. You just do it. So I think that could be a case where, 15 is what he's saying the high is. I think there's a better chance that there's probably more than that. But again, I'm not behind those walls. This is just my take on where things are at. And speaking of Stevie Amar, this was another thing that he popped up that, he mentioned that there's two types of transfers from Boston College, right? He talked about the guys leaving. There are guys that are fourth or fifth year players that they're not going to have a big role next year and have moved on. And he said, like, I have no ill will for those guys. I totally get it. Like, you want to go play, go somewhere else. That makes sense. Like, I'll mention Jack Funk, for instance, like a guy who played on special teams a little bit. But if he transfers to, maybe a step down, he's going to get a chance to play, and he's got his degree. Go for it. Like, go get that opportunity. That totally makes a ton of sense, right? And then there's other players that are chasing other things, and he didn't get into what that was. But he mentioned Stevie Amar, who's the freshman tight end by name, a guy we never even got to see play. There's a kid from California. And he mentioned that, this is a guy he would love to get back. Like, let him go enter the portal and see if he can get him back. I thought Stevie Amar, when he committed to BC, was a good get. I was hoping he would stay here. I kind of liked, as a freshman, I thought he looked pretty solid at camp, like for a freshman. Like, he wasn't like anything spectacular, but he was there from the summer. He was learning. But for him, and again, I don't know his situation. There must be a reason why, and it could be to explore, but he's from California. Like, if a school from California, there's a million of them out there, offer him and he gets a chance to play closer to home, I could see him probably just taking that. But who knows? Who knows what his reasons are? I'm a little skeptical that he come back, but there's always that chance. So it was an interesting podcast. I always like to listen to his football takes. There's the other pieces of his podcast as well, which I'm sure he'd say about mine. I could give or take because it's like, him talking about food and stuff like that. But his football stuff, I always find interesting. For instance, the one thing that he mentioned that I thought was really interesting was how the two new line coaches, came to his desk and why he picked them. So Kurt Anderson, right? Offensive line coach, knew Doug Marrone recommended him. I think they worked together with the Bills. So highly recommend. Remember, Doug Marrone, who is now with the Patriots, was an assistant for BC last year at the offensive line. Someone that Bill O'Brien obviously very much respects his opinion. There's your connection there. Boom. That makes sense, right? The other one, which was more confusing, and I was really glad he kind of got into this, was Joe Dailey. Joe Dailey is the new wide receivers coach. He was the wide receivers coach under Jeff Hafley. And he said the reason that they selected Dailey was because, he heard great things about him. His attention to detail is what he listed. But the thing I had no idea until he mentioned it was that he went to school with Will Lawing, so they know each other. I've seen Joe Dailey at practices last year. I forget if it was summer or spring, but he was there. I've seen him around. So that part wasn't a huge surprise, but the fact I had no clue that he was connected to Will Lawing. And obviously the offensive coordinator is part of that routine. So that was just another interesting little tidbit. If you like that kind of stuff, his podcast has some really interesting stuff in BC from an insider. So you can check that out too. Now, in a moment, speaking of portal, we got more portal talk to get into. Two names entered the portal that were local recruits that BC had offered before, but I just don't see them as an answer at quarterback. I'll explain who they are and why I don't think they should be at BC in just a moment. Let's talk about something men do not bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, and life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiette Ready is a new generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rougiette Ready combines 3 clinical proven ingredients in 1 minute that dissolves into your tongue so it absorbs fast. It's easy to understand why 150,000 men have already made the switch. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rougiette.com/lockedoncollege. That's Rougiette, R-U-G-I-E-T, RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Thank you for making Locked On Boston College your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club and get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Boston College, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You get an invite to the members-only Locked On Boston College, Locked On Everydayer Discord. That's for everybody, which includes a group chat just for listeners of Locked On BC. And if you want to take it an extra step, you could take it to our All Access program, which gives you extra episodes. And I'm going to have a 5-minute extra episode for you all this afternoon. So you're going to want to make sure you check that out. I give you more details, more analysis. If you can't get enough of BC, this is where you want to. Additionally, you get 15% off all Locked On gear, like my great hat here. You can get that in the store. You can also get access to texting me. Yes, you can text AJ. And you get that all part of the All Access tier. Get all the show all the show details and part of all becoming part of this in the show notes, and make sure you sign up today. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here of Eagle Insider. Thank you all who have made us part of your daily routine. And if you're an everydayer and part of the Everydayer Club, thank you so much for joining. I hope you're enjoying the new program here. So let's get into this. 2 new quarterbacks entered the transfer portal this weekend. And when I saw both their names, I said Boston College fans are going to have their little bat signals go up because they're local, and one of them is a legacy. So let's get into the non-legacy first, and that's Pop Watson. William Watson III from Springfield Central. He's a quarterback from Virginia Tech. He played a couple games, beat 2 years ago. And was teammates with the Griffins. So will BC be involved with him? I doubt it. Nothing against the kid. I just don't see him a match in what Bill O'Brien wants to do and what he needs, right? This is going to be the theme of this segment. You need a quarterback that can really play because you don't have anybody right now. You have Shaker Reisig and 2 freshmen. Bringing in William Watson, a player who has basically played just a few downs here and there, and played 2 games 2 years ago, like that doesn't do the answer. He's small, he's mobile. I don't want to say he sounds like Tommy Castellanos because I haven't watched enough Watson tape to say that. I just know that when he came out of college, high school in 2023, BC never showed much interest. And the style of quarterback that they're looking at now does not line up with what I think Pop Watson would do. Career-wise, he's thrown for 558 yards, 481 of them came last year, completing 58% of his passes, which isn't all that great. But again, he's young, so it doesn't matter. He ran 40 times, so again, a mobile quarterback. It doesn't seem like what BC is trying to do. With the guys we've talked about, whether it's Jaden Craig or even Deuce Knight, like these are all better fits for what O'Brien wants to do. And I just don't see them changing an offense around when you didn't do it with Thomas Castellanos for a guy like Pop Watson. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's one I have on my list. That's one player I just said, I don't see it. So that's one quarterback that entered the portal. The second is Henry Hasselbeck. And I'm telling you, BC fans are going to blow their gasket, right? Like, it's a Hasselbeck. He's the son of Matt, and he's the nephew of Tim. All the Hasselbecks go to Boston College. Well, he didn't. And I believe both staffs had a chance to get him to commit and to come to BC, and he didn't. And it's because I think they just had eyes at other spots for that quarterback position, right? When Hafley was there, he went with Jonathan Montague, which ended up turning into a wide receiver. And then you had O'Brien, and I think he had a chance. Timing is a little bit blurry there, but I don't see this one either. I just don't. I think different people have different views on what his could be. I just don't think, he played at Zavarian Brothers, You've had a bunch of players. You've got another Funk coming from Zavarian Brothers coming in. I just don't see BC flipping this around again and going for a Hasselbeck. I mean, he certainly has the size, 6'3", but again, put what he can possibly do to the side for a second and look again to the needs of what BC needs. BC is going to go with 4 quarterbacks. That's usually what they do with their quarterback room. Are you going to bring in Henry Hasselbeck, who has never thrown a collegiate pass in his life, as your answer to losing Dylan Larnaghan and losing Grayson James? If that is the case, that makes absolutely no sense to me. He may be a good quarterback. Maybe that's the case that, he ends up that way. You cannot take that risk. I think you need to go and get a quarterback that's played. No offense to Henry, who's now in his third year, going into his third year, he hasn't played at all. So if you were to go with Henry Hasselbeck next year, you would be going with Shaker Isaac, who's only played garbage time football, and a quarterback who's never played, or 3 quarterbacks that have never played. Tell me that isn't terrifying. So even if you believe that Henry Hasselbeck is going to be a solid quarterback at some point, you cannot take the risk of taking a kid whom staffs before had not, they have not gone with him to be the answer at your quarterback. It just does not make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, so I just don't see it happening. And whether you think he's a power 4 quarterback or not, I've heard different things on him, and I'm not here to slam kids. It's just not my deal. I just don't think he's the answer for BC. We've talked about a bunch of other quarterbacks, and all right, here you go. Put a gun to my head and ask me, who would you choose, Henry Hasselbeck or Mason McKenzie, kid who's played at D2? I'm going to pick Mason McKenzie. I just am. Like that if I was put in that situation, I would pick that. Okay? Just a euphemism right there, right? So that's where I'm going with this. I think it's more the need of your school than the kid himself. Like, you need something different than Henry Hasselbeck. I'm just saying that. A school, maybe a UConn, if they have somebody, that could do it for a year and then bring him in, or UMass, who has nothing. Like, he could go and start probably right away for them. Like, those probably make more sense, right? So those are just 2 core. I just don't see them going after. And it's more that it doesn't make sense at this point. Now, in our final segment, BC basketball wins. They beat LeMoyne. I bet you're all excited about this as I am. I'll tell you why the latest win is even more depressing than actually losing in just a moment. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them feel even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new with boost, bonuses, and surprise. Like you've worked a whole week, you want to get a little bit something extra with it. FanDuel's got yourself covered. You can do it. It adds extra energy to your Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here of Eagle Insider. Thank you all who have joined me, and thank you all who have made us your first listen every day. If you're looking for a second listen, check out Locked On ACC. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Boston College ended their 2025 part of their schedule and their out-of-conference schedule with a win of 72-64 over LeMoyne on Sunday afternoon. Now, I joked on yesterday's show, and of course I get responses back, that I didn't know where LeMoyne was. And I had never heard of LeMoyne. I didn't know it. But BC again, for the 4th time, and I couldn't believe this stat, they've played 4 NEC conference games, lost 1 to Central Connecticut, and trailed in the other 3 in the second half. This is insane. Like, You won. That's great. But in all these games, it took like a last surge to win. You didn't look better than any of these teams. And it happened again on Sunday. So you got a ton of points from Jaden Hastings, Donald Hand, and Fred Payne. That's your positive right there. Fred Payne played out of his mind in this game. And Donald Hand had a great second half. That being said, what are we doing that this is another NEC game, and not even a good NEC game, that you had to struggle to win? It just feels again like the writing on the wall. Like we're getting into ACC conference play. And I don't think there's some teams in the ACC that you're looking at and you're going, oh, you could beat them. Pitt's not that great. Syracuse isn't great. Notre Dame isn't great. But the level of where BC is at doesn't make me confident that BC is going to win a single ACC game. Now, you've got some shooters, Donald Hand, Fred Payne, that if they get red hot, they'll probably pick a team or two off. But you just exited out of conference play where you scheduled 4 NEC teams. You scheduled UMass, who's terrible. You scheduled all these bad opponents. You played a tournament against some bad teams that weren't great. You played one Power 5 team in LSU, and you won. You ended this one game over 500. One game. When we were going into this offseason, the hope was you'd get out with 3 losses. One bad loss and a few other, LSU and, maybe you'd lose to like Temple or something like that, right? You have 6 losses. You have 7 wins. Now you enter the tough part of your schedule. And how do you feel about this? I don't feel very confident. The team has no chemistry. It does not seem like it has much beyond. It's very top heavy right now. You've got, you're going to have to rely on Donald Hand and Fred Payne to score a ton of points. You're going to have to hope that Caleb Steger figures something out to become, your third option. And your front court's got to do something offensively. Their front court does nothing in terms of offense. You get that one. I'm sure that BC will be playing Aiden Shaw dunk from last week like 15 times, but you need more than one crazy dunk a game. You look at what they did in this game. You had Hastings that played pretty well, but your other front court guys, you got 2 points from Aiden Shaw. You got 2 points from Bowden Kapke, and that's it. Like, you're looking at you got 2 points from Jason Asamoah, and Marko Radunovic had 0 points. So, like, the front court's just not doing it. Like, these ACC teams are they're gonna lock down Donald Hand and Fred Payne and force someone like Aiden Shaw or Jaden Hastings to beat you. They're not gonna be able to beat them. You barely beat LeMoyne. You barely beat FDU. You lost to Central Connecticut. Like, this is bad. Like, I'm very concerned coming next week. Like, you're starting the ACC part of your schedule on Sunday, I think it's a week from now, against Georgia Tech. And they're 9-4. And they just hammered FAU or the Rattlers. Florida A&M, excuse me. They just hammered them. I don't know, man. Like, I was totally off the bandwagon a couple weeks ago, but we're hitting where the rubber hits the road now, and it doesn't look good. So for BC basketball, good luck. I hope they figure something out, but I just have no faith. The fact that LeMoyne they were losing to LeMoyne going, in the second half. You can't be doing this. I know it's BC. I know they have a terrible history. I know these are issues, but if there isn't a clearer case that they need to change the direction fast, this out of conference part of their schedule was clearly it. It showed you this season it was toast before it even began. So that's my thoughts on that. Now, we still have no idea who the defensive coordinator is for BC football. We have transfer portal news. It's all going to start coming in. Like, it's going to be coming in like, you ever the video of Homer in the Treehouse of Horrors where they're just jamming donuts down his throat in hell? That's kind of what this transfer portal news is going to be like. It's just going to be nonstop. So be expecting lots of news coming up in the next week or so. and I'll be there to cover it all. Thank you all. My name's AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. You can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, all the social networks, and of course on Eagle Insider. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.